The theory of feminism, or better known as feminist theory, burst forth from the flames of discontent, shattering the glass ceiling of a male-dominated international system that had, for far too long, marginalized women's voices. In some countries around the world, like the United States, women have been clamoring to hold different positions of leadership, especially the top one, but to no avail, at least for the latter. But just in front of the southern gate of the United States, where the never-stop amazing Donald Trump pledged to build a wall, which would then be funded fantastically by the very neighbor he wanted to shut. I am simply talking about Mexico, a country feared to be one of the world's most precarious places for both journalists and tourists because of drugs and gang violence. There, Claudia Sheinbaum has made an unprecedentedly groundbreaking history by becoming the very first woman to get the keys to the most important office of our country. She has been elected to now lead one of the most strategic countries in the Americas. The election was preceded by bloody campaigns which saw several candidates killed and many more stepping out of the race for fear of assassination. Dr. Claudia Sheinbaum, a 61-year-old climate scientist and a former mayor of Mexico City, has won the presidency after a landslide victory with nearly 60% of the vote, which is considered as one of the highest vote percentage in Mexico's democratic history. And she will now be assuming office in October amid lots of challenges. Mexico, for starters, is a country geographically situated right beneath the United States, that is, from the south, sharing a land border, and in some places like Arizona, California, Texas, and of course New Mexico, a desert region, which has been described as quote-unquote vast, arid, sun-baked, infertile, and potentially dangerous, just like any other desert. The border between the US and Mexico is the most frequently crossed border in the world, with approximately or even more than 350 million documented crossings annually. The country's population is now close to 130 million people, and the outgoing president, Andre Manuel Lopez Obrador, or beautifully shortened as AMLO, in whose shadow Claudia will now govern, is leaving office while the successor, Dr. Claudia, faces a great deal of excruciatingly daunting challenges to deal with. Well, some of the challenging challenges Mexico is and has been facing include drug trafficking, gang-related violence, and of course, femicide, the killing of women because of their gender. According to a columnist for Al Jazeera English called Belen Fernandez, Mexico currently sees at least 10 women and girls killed on a daily basis, with tens of thousands of women missing, and the vast majority of femicides go unprosecuted. Even though Ms. Fernandez cautions that, quote-unquote, under Claudia Sheinbaum's presidency, organized crimes will likely be calling the shots. But on the other side of the coin, we wanted to know what this victory means to women around the world. So we reached out to Dr. Yvonne Ridley, a British journalist who is now running for a Member of Parliament seat at the British Parliament. And she was wowed by the Claudia's victory and has some sort of optimism.
Claudia Sheinbaum, wow, what a result. A lot of pressure on her as the first ever female Mexican president, but I'm sure she'll cope with it. You know, that is one hell of an incendiary political arena to be in, but I am confident that with the right support, she'll do amazingly well as long as she's got a good team around her, and the people are obviously supporting her.
Well, in Mexico, women's political participation in the country has been on the rise since the passing of a gender quota law in 2002. Right now, Mexico has the highest percentage of female legislators in the parliament of any democracy in the world, and more women voted than men in Mexico's last presidential election in 2018. So for us to get more context on the election, I got in touch with Daniel Chavez Landeros, an associate professor at the University of New Hampshire's Department of Languages, Literatures and Cultures, also an expert on Mexican affairs. Let's have a listen to what he has to say. But as he has told me, this is a celebratory moment in Mexico.
The elections were also historical landmarks in many regards. 98 million voters were registered to cast their ballot, of which 71% showed up. And the candidate who won the election, Dr. Claudia Sheinbaum, received 35 million votes, which is also a record. Dr. Claudia Sheinbaum has been in politics for close to 20 years, holding office, and before that as an activist. She was in charge of environmental policy for Mexico City while Andre Manuel Lopez Obrador was mayor of Mexico City back in 2000-2006. From there, in 2014, she was the president of the council for a small town in Mexico City, and most recently, the mayor of Mexico City from 2018 to 2023. Claudia Sheinbaum, she is a scientist by training. She received a PhD in environmental engineering and environmental policy. She actually was also part of a team who got the Nobel Prize for their research in environmental policies. And she is indeed a woman of her own.
Professor Chavez, looking at the successes she has recorded, especially as the mayor of Mexico City, is alluding that her presidency is expected to be quite promising.
Among her successes in Mexico City was to cut the homicide rates in half since she arrived. She also brought to fruition important projects in infrastructure and changing some of the vocation of areas in Mexico City and promoting community development, clean energy, for instance. She is expected to have a very successful presidency. Some of the challenges she will have will be, again, the levels of...
Earlier on, we started talking about some of the challenges facing the newly elected first ever female Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum. Here is Professor Daniel Chavez again looking at some of the root causes of the violence besetting the Andre Manuel Lopez Obrador's country.
Some of the challenges she will have will be, again, the levels of crime in some areas of Mexico. She has mentioned that she is projecting to apply the similar policies to the national level that she did in the city, including that to combat the causes of crime, extreme poverty, marginalization, bringing education to younger Mexicans, and also to bring criminals to justice. This is to say, to reduce the levels of impunity, which are very high at this point.
As a woman, are we expecting to see a feminist government? And how could that help curtail the killing of innocent women and girls? This is an interesting question that Mr. Landeros is going to address.
She is expected to lead a very progressive presidency with a feminist agenda, also trying to curb the high rates of femicide that have been troubling Mexico for the past decade. And perhaps
Before we go, let's try and domesticate this issue and also leave you with a critical ending that would be interpreted or misinterpreted differently. Well, looking at the complex nature of Nigerian politics, some people think that the problems that powerful men have failed to resolve could not be dealt with by the already perceivedly weak opposite gender. This is a serious argument raised, and Dr. Khadija Sanusi Gumbi of Bayero University, Kano, who is at the same time a visiting professor at Mariam Abacha American University of Nigeria, has professionally tackled it by asking some fundamental questions.
And now, becoming a president in Nigeria, even for a man, it's quite a challenge. It's very challenging. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible, but the question is that what Nigeria needs at the moment, or what are the challenges currently facing women in Nigeria? Has Nigeria fully accepted the woman and is ready, and even ask the woman the question, is she ready to take control of the spheres of power? A number of the questions, some may answer yes, some may answer no.
But one serious setback for women is lack of support. Obviously, men always believe that women should only be reduced to kitchen serving the very men who claim to always go out and do the fight for them. But Dr. Khadija Gumbi believes firmly that it's not about who is better than who, it's about working together to make Nigeria great. Well, great again or just great? I don't know. You need to ask Mr. Trump.
Where's the support? Now, capacity and capability devoid of support brings us to where we are today. Some say that it's our traditions, it's our religion. But if we go deeper in learning about our traditions or religion, we see many women in the political positions and political spheres, right? Now, like I said, it is not always about comparison. If we continue to compare, then we won't get it right. What is important is who delves well and how can the country excel and how do we project Nigeria to greater heights, right? So if both men and women in Nigeria can identify how they can contribute in their different capacities and in their different capabilities, then we need to agree, or we need not to agree, who is better than who. Rather, it's a collective responsibility for all.
One important angle to look at is that of leadership style. Both male and female leaders are said to have and do exhibit distinctly different styles of leadership. For example, the latter are said to be transformational. That is, they tend to be empowering others and fostering collaborations as well. A typical example of this is the former German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Let's not forget Jacinda Ardern, former Prime Minister of New Zealand, who is described as inclusive in decision making and who also is said to have sought people's inputs. And in terms of building connections, the name that comes to mind is Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, former president of Sierra Leone. Here is Dr. Khadija Sanusi Gumbi talking about some of the prominent female heads of state and their qualities.
While we were growing up, we learnt about Indira Gandhi, Margaret Thatcher, right? And we also witnessed Angela Merkel of Germany. There's Sheikhana Hasina. You remember Hasina of Bangladesh. Even if you come, we have Halima Yaqub of Singapore. There's in Africa. We have currently the president of Tanzania, Samia Suluhu Hassan. You remember her? Ellen Sirleaf. You remember Ellen Sirleaf Johnson, right? In Democratic of the Congo, there's the Domitian, you remember her, Elizabeth, yes.
But the darkest side of this is that the world will never forget some of the most popular and prominent female leaders, the likes of Dilma Rousseff, who ruled Brazil from 2011 to 2016. She was impeached and removed from office amid corruption allegations and economic crisis. Looking eastward is the former South Korean leader Park Geun-hye, who served as the president of South Korea from 2013 to 2017. She was impeached and arrested on corruption charges, leading to widespread protests. We, of course, are not here to wish what happened to the aforementioned leaders to happen to Dr. Claudia Sheinbaum. Not at all. Never. She should just be mindful of the enormity of the task ahead of her and maybe learn from history so as to avoid any failure. And in Nigeria, according to Dr. Khadija Sunusugumbi, looking at history, there is hope that things are going to get better. But those immensely inherent challenges besetting the nation have to be solved, resolved, unlocked, and of course unraveled.
For Nigeria, the time will come. Definitely it will come. But there are challenges that Nigeria is facing. These challenges are immense. You look at it from education to access to health to financial freedom to even mindset shift. So in summary, this debate will go on and on and on. But my position is still that capability and capacity is not what hinders the rise of a female president in Nigeria, but the inherent challenges that block and the blockers along her way. We all remember Sarah Jibril, who was the only woman to have contested presidential nomination for the ruling party then, PDP. And out of her courage and confidence sprouts so many Sarahs today. But like I said, the challenges are enormous, and we all have to look inward to resolve our differences and support one another rather than continue to use gender as a yardstick.
Finally, going back to the Donald Trump's sarcastically or ironically favorite neighbor, I would say, despite all the doom and gloom we hear about Mexico, there still are many incredible people living happily in the country. This is The Monologue, and I am Umar Isa Dandagu. On behalf of everyone that has contributed to the production of this explainer, Saifullahi Gambo Munjibur has been the recordist, and Abdullahi A. Al-Qasim Mr. Yellow is our sound engineer. My name is Umar Isa Dandagu, saying goodbye and see you very soon.